Is a church pew better than a hospital bed? Just okay. Just wondering.
Levels of comfort, I don't know.
If you're new to church, welcome. We're glad that you're here this morning. We take this time of teaching very seriously, so we provide a note sheet to go along with this time. So if we pass those note sheets down each row. And Father, as we come into this holy moment of looking into your word, this is something we do not take for granted. Some of our brothers and sisters in places around this world risk great danger just to open up a Bible, to possess one. We are privileged to have multiple Bibles right here. But Lord, without your Holy Spirit, we can't understand what we're reading. And so I pray that you will open the eyes of our hearts, that we will behold wonderful things in your word today. And all God's children said, Amen. Well, it is very appropriate that on this Father's Day that we consider this theme of friendship this morning. Because study after study shows that when it comes to friendship, men really struggle at this, have far fewer friends than the ladies do. And the friendships that they do have often lack for an emotional depth that most women enjoy. And this isn't a trivial thing. How many of you want to live a long and happy life? Raise your hand if that is your desire. I want to give you a list of things here, and you tell me which you think is the most important to achieving that end. Diet, exercise, avoiding addictive substances, friendship. Of course, the answer is, and you would guess from the theme, diet. No, I'm just it's friendship. Do you know that loneliness is just as destructive to physical health as is overeating, as is alcoholism, as is smoking 15 cigarettes a day? Friends are that important to us. One commonality in all these mass shootings that have taken place in our nation is that those who stoop to commit this type of evil are not only losers, but they are loners. And 9 out of 10 times, it's the loner part that comes first and creates the loser. It's a scary thing to have only yourself for company. Look at yourself right now and say, yeah, that's for sure. How do I look at myself, Pastor Barry? I don't understand. Having a friend to talk to you when you're depressed, when you have real depression, having a friend who talks to you regularly is just as effective, studies have proven, as professional therapy or medications. Why having friends is even more important to your well-being than grandchildren. Did you know that? Stephen, go away from your grandpa right now. He doesn't need you anymore. He's got friends. Oh, you're friends. That's awesome. Of course, none of this that I'm sharing with you is a surprise to those that are steeped in the Bible, because the Bible tells us in its very second chapter, God to us, it is not good for men and women to be alone. We need friends to journey with us through life. So let's open our Bibles up to 1 Samuel chapter 18, and let's begin by asking a real simple question. What is a friend? Someone once said that true friends are people who say nice things behind your back. I like that. Or how about, friends are God's way of apologizing for our families. I think that's good. Now this one is funnier. It's a little colorful, but it's also very much more useful than anything else I find. I could not pinpoint a source for this, but I openly laughed when I read it. Friends are like bras. Stay with me, work with me. Did he say bra in church? Yes. Close to your heart and there for support. But I love that because it has the two elements of a real friendship. Nearness, being close to your heart, and commitment. That's why more women have more friends than men, okay. I can see we're all in a cheery mood this morning. This is good. This is good. Because I wasn't sure if I was going to lose my job by sharing that one. But it's true. Friend is someone close to your heart and there for support. And that's what distinguishes it from ordinary relationships or mere acquaintances. The Bible says in Proverbs 18:24, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. You can have hundreds of friends on Facebook, but everyone knows in their heart of hearts that that's just window dressing. You do know that, right? That the friends you have on Facebook aren't really... You nod your head. You do understand that, right? Some of you are texting right now. Oh, Pastor Mary says I have to unfriend you. But a true friend is going to do more than just toss you a like now and then. And as the Bible begins to lift for us the curtain on this man David that we were introduced to last week, this man whom God has chosen to become the true king of Israel. Early in his story, we are told of a deep, deep friendship that David develops with the son of King Saul, and his name is Jonathan. And we're going to use their friendship as the template for what we want to say today. Now, some quick context to set up how David and Jonathan cross paths with each other. Even though God selected David in last week's story, if you were here, you recall that story. Even though David has been anointed to be king, he does not begin ruling the very next morning. And there's some very real reasons why that is so. Reason number one, Saul is still on the throne. And if you've ever played King of the Mountain, how many of you ever played King of the Mountain? You know, the game that you play in winter. And if ever there was a time to talk about winter in safety, is it not the first day of summer? We could not be any further away from winter right now. How many of you play King of the Mountain? You get on top of the big snowdrift, and what do? The guy says, I'm the king! Does he come down voluntarily? No. You have to push him down. You have to throw snowballs at him. King Saul is on top of the mountain. He's not voluntarily coming down. God's going to have to push him off. But truth be told, secondly, David is not ready to be king yet when he is first called and anointed. And we see this all the time in the Bible, where God first calls a person, then he equips a person, then he releases them. We see this all the time in the Bible. I think of Abraham. And I think of Moses, and I think of Paul. God calls them, and then he makes them suitable. He doesn't look for suitable people and say, I want to use you. You look like you've got everything I need. No, he calls us. How does he save us? Does he look for really good people and then come up to you and say, I want you to be in my family? No, he comes to us when we're lost, when we're broken, when we're despairing. And he calls us and saves us at that moment. And then he makes something good out of us. And so we see in the Bible, like with Abraham, he waited 25 years before God released him into his true call to be a father of many nations. We see with Moses, it took 40 years. Paul, 18 years. It's going to take 15 years before David will officially become king. It's God's way. A third point to chew on. Israel's not ready for David yet either. Remember from last week we said Saul was a king after Israel's own heart. David was a king after God's own heart. And so what God needs to do here is he needs to allow Israel to feel the pain of their stubbornness and their bad choices. And this also is God's way. When we sin against God, usually he doesn't rush in just to save us from ourselves, does he? Janice and I, we got into serious financial trouble early in our marriage, piled up a lot of debt that we could not manage and shouldn't have had. It took 5 years to crawl out from under that hole. And God did not rush in and save the day for us. The pain made us wiser, which is why God does it this way. It's not that he's mean. It's that like a good father, he loves us and he wants to learn that our choices matter. So he allows us to feel the pain of our bad choices. That's good parenting. That's your Father's Day tip of the day if you came looking for something. Let your kids feel pain and sadness. It'll make them stronger and they will thank you one day. That's also what the new Pixar movie, Inside Out, is all about, by the way. And I appreciate them for waiting until this sermon to release their movie. That was really nice. It had nothing to do with Jurassic World opening last week. They were waiting for this moment. See, I have connections in Hollywood. Just say it. So, since David's not going to be king for how long? 15 more years. What's he going to do in the meantime? Well, God is going to slowly introduce him to King Saul and to Israel and to Israel's enemies. And David is going to grow into his role. You've heard of the story David and Goliath? Raise your hand. Gee, Davy. Not that one. Those of you who are a little older know what that one's all about. Gee, Davy. We're going to actually formally consider that story in a couple weeks. But that's David's coming out party. And as a result of that amazing victory that David has over Goliath, he becomes at once an overnight sensation. And King Saul brings him into his court. That's where he meets his son Jonathan. And the two of them hit it off right away. Look at the beginning of chapter 18. Those verses that Kelly read for us earlier. After David had finished talking with Saul, says verse 1, Jonathan became what? One in spirit with David. And he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. Well, here it is. Closeness. Jonathan loved David as himself. And commitment. Jonathan made a covenant with David. Friends do that. They'll often share with each other something that symbolizes their commitment. Pinky swears. Give your neighbor a pinky swear right now. Come on.
No. Swear.
Or blood oaths. All right, get a knife out right now. No. What Jonathan is doing right here, he's giving away his royal robes and some of his weaponry as a symbol of their friendship. 15 years later, when Jonathan is killed in, battle. Spoiler alert, sorry. Nobody walk out, please. When Jonathan is killed 15 years later, David writes a song in lament for Jonathan. It's recorded in 2 Samuel 1, and in that song he writes these words, I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women. This is true, deep friendship. Now, there have been people over the years who've read the account of David and Jonathan's friendship and the words like what David just shared here in his lament. And they've suggested that because of their closeness and because of this language they use, that obviously this was, and it angers me that this is put forward as a theory, that this was a homosexual tryst. As though two men are incapable of having a close and committed friendship. And if you ever find such a thing, well, there you go, must be gay. I think our culture is just poisoning the well right now when it comes to sex and sexuality and gender today. I think it's poisoned the heart of men today by putting forward this stereotype of what a real man is or ought to be. Social scientists have even given it a name. You can find articles about it. They call it the man box. From the website The Good Men Project comes this definition of the man box. Quote, a real man is strong and stoic. He doesn't show emotions other than anger and excitement. He's a breadwinner, able-bodied. He plays or watches sports. He is the dominant participant in every exchange. Firefighter, lawyer, CEO. He's the man's man. Now, how do people who put themselves in the man's box or who are put in the man box by others, how do people like this find friends? Well, usually in social settings. Clubs, organizations, something like church. Events that are built around an activity where they can display their competence. Where they can say to other men, here, be my friend. Not because of who I am, but because of what I can do. What I can provide. Here, I can barbecue you the best steak. Here, I can make you laugh. Here, I can impress you with my knowledge of sports. Guys who live in the man box world would never do what Jonathan and David did. Share their emotional selves with one another. So David and Jonathan must be gay. Such thinking confirms the theory that I have about where most homosexual attraction comes from. I think most homosexual expression that we see is what I call eroticized friendship. It's all about finding friends and not having any. Someone is awkward around the opposite sex. Well, hello, who isn't? I used to think when I was a boy they had cooties. Remember all that? The same, and so people who are awkward in those settings, they find same-sex friendships easier to make and easier to manage. The day comes when that closeness gets sexualized. Suddenly they're gay. No, it's an ache for friendship that goes too far. A second scenario, a person is reeling from a tragedy or an abuse or neglect. They find company among same-sex friends, or an older mentor takes them aside and becomes for them a father figure. This happens all the time. And then the line gets crossed sexually. The older person takes advantage of the younger person. The emotions and the attractions get messed up by sexual feelings. They must be gay. Now, it's an ache for friendship that gets sexualized. A third scenario, certain boys grow up learning of the man box, and they look at themselves and they see that they don't fit. They don't have big muscles. They're not into sports all that much. Maybe they're good at art, or they play a musical instrument, or they're like me when I was a boy. They read all the time. And if you live in a culture like this, they might start thinking to themselves, oh no, I'm not a real man. I must be gay. And as they grow older, they meet other people like them. A bond develops. Emotions start to come alive, and one day, it's all sexualized. And the body starts firing away sexually, and the brain then reinforces it. The neurons kick in. And then you start thinking to yourself and saying to others, I've discovered who I am, what my identity is. When in reality, who you are has already been defined by God in how He created you. And He even gives you a physical marker so that you can figure out who you are. And you don't have to be confused by it. It's that simple. And a man, you see, who loves the arts or who loves to dance is not an effeminate man. He's a man who happens to love the arts and loves to dance. And I hate the way that the province of dance has been taken over and adopted as a secondary marker for those who are effeminate. What do you think Gene Kelly would think of that if he saw that today? A woman who loves the outdoors and is great at sports. It's not a tomboy, it's not a masculine woman. She's a woman who loves the outdoors and enjoys sports. It's that simple. What Jonathan and David are showing here is what every man, woman, and child ought to discover. A real friend. A friendship that shows closeness and a commitment that enriches their lives and has emotional depth and reaches down until it touches their very souls. And it's something every one of us should seek to discover. So then the next big question is, where do we find it? How do we discover it? Let's turn our note sheets over and continue looking at the story. There's three things I see in Jonathan and David's story that point to how friendships grow and develop and get stronger. Friendships are found in shared spaces, shared experiences, and shared souls. Let's consider these in turn. First, you have to have a shared space to find friends. Life brings David and Jonathan together. And life is filled with those places where we cross paths with people in just ordinary life. It happens at work, it happens at school, sports leagues, gardening clubs. It even happens on the road. When Hannah was in college and we used to take her back to Messiah College on long drives. You notice how you get in relationships with people you're driving with? Remember that? You get a car that's kind of following with you and you get to know the color and the occupants. Hannah coined a phrase for that, road marriage. She said, gee, Dad, I see you have road marriage with that Toyota up the road. Yeah, well, I'm going to divorce them right now. Shared space. starts to make connections and launches friendships. It's like Winnie the Pooh says to Eeyore, and I don't have a good Winnie the Pooh accent, sorry, but you can't stay in your corner of the forest waiting for others to come to you. You have to go to them sometimes. Ooh, oh, I'm trying my Eeyore. Oh, sorry. What? Well, I guess so, Pooh Bear. Okay, that's close, thank you. You know, if you're the kind of person who never sticks around for coffee hour after church, then don't complain to God or complain to me later that you can't find any friends at Grace. You have to physically be with people in a shared space where real conversations can take place. This hour right here that we're in, it's only the first part of the magic that is church. This hour without the next hour is like getting to first base when it comes to friendship. And some of you need to become like a brave baseball player and try and stretch out that single and get to second base and third base. Stop playing it safe. The day in which we live provides other opportunities for friendship. The computer is an amazing tool today that provides incredible opportunity for meeting others. Video gaming and dating services, Skyping, social media. I connected with a young man, a college student from Romania a year ago, who found my book, Ben-Hur, The Odyssey, online and loves the Ben-Hur story and didn't know there was a sequel. He emails me here, asks how he can get a copy of the book. It was the coolest thing. It could never have happened until computers came along. I can't wait till we get to heaven and we start sharing actual space with people who up to now we've only heard about. Right now, I can't be David's friend. I can't be C.S. Lewis's friend, one of my favorite writers. But one day, in eternity, I'll share space with them. I will have the opportunity to have a cup of tea with C.S. Lewis. I'll stand in line to get that cup of tea, but I'll have an opportunity in eternity to jam with King David. Him on his lyre, me on my guitar. And David will say, "Ha ha, I heard that joke you told about me going down to the Lyre Center. Ha ha, that was funny." None of you laughed at it last week, but it's going to happen. We're going to share space with King David. I'm going to get a tap on the shoulder when we get to heaven. I'll look around. I'll go, "Who are you?" And come to find out it'll be a great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather from 1,000 years ago that I didn't even know I had. And he'll say, "Son, I've been watching you." Not bad. Let's take a walk by the river and get to know each other. Won't that be cool? Shared space is that important. But it's just the first start of finding friends. You then need to go on to having shared experiences. My future friend, C.S. Lewis, said, and the quote's on your note sheet, "Friendship is born the minute one person says to another, 'What? You too? I thought I was the only one.'" What did David and Jonathan share in terms of experience? They both were young warriors. Now, David hasn't had a chance to even show his mettle yet. But even before he faces down Goliath, we know that he's faced down a charging lion, and he's killed a bear. David is a young man of indomitable courage. But guess what? Jonathan has it also. The story is told in chapter 14, which we'll come to momentarily, about how Jonathan and his armor bearer single-handedly faced down a troop of 24 Philistines and rout them. David and Jonathan were both natural leaders. Men were drawn to them and rallied to be by their side. Shared experiences bring about such potential for having real deep friendships. On paper, at least, marriages should deepen over time, simply because of all that the husband and wife experience together. And it's sad when that doesn't happen. I can testify that after 31 years of marriage with this woman, my best friend, that this is true. "Ooh, you're my best friend." All I got to do to say to Janice is "Hannah." And her eyes will light up and water with tears. All I have to do to get her face to light up is just say England and New Zealand and St. Louis Cardinals. You wouldn't know this. She puts on a good act, but sports is the way to get to my wife's heart. Oh, horses, yeah. That was a lie, by the way. Matt, Tank, sarcasm. Yeah. Inside joke because we shared an experience Tuesday, so. Yes, Eli. Sorry, I just yell. I just can't help it. I was born that way. And I can see you are too. Shared experiences that forge friendships can also come from deep and dark experiences. Shared pain can link hearts together in a powerful way. Those who have served in combat have a natural affinity to one another. Two vets lock eyes with each other. They may have never met before, and at once there is a bond that few would be able to understand. It's a great scene at the end of the Lord of the Rings movies. The four hobbits are back in Hobbiton after all those indescribable adventures together, and they're sharing a drink together. And there's noise and laughter and people all around, but they're melancholy because nobody understands all that they just went to. And they sigh, and they manage a smile, and they raise their glasses to each other because of all that they have experienced. That's friendship. David and Jonathan were both caught up in the drama of dealing with Saul, King Saul's growing madness. Jonathan didn't get a pass just because he was Saul's son. In fact, his father did not hesitate to enact his wrath on him on occasion. And when, after a short time, Saul turns on David, goes all Game of Thrones on him, tries first to kill him, and when that fails, sends others to kill him, Jonathan has a choice to make, and he doesn't hesitate at all. He's going to help his best friend. Perhaps you've heard the Irish proverb, a friend asks you what's wrong. A good friend gives you a shoulder to cry on. A best friend helps you bury the bodies. That's what Jonathan and David have going on. And he helps David to escape the wrath of his father. Chapter 20, if you look to verse 41, the whole chapter is just an incredibly moving account of what happened. Jonathan learns that his father will stop at nothing until David is dead. And so he comes to David, who is outside the city. Verse 41 says, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed 3 times before Jonathan, with his face to the ground. And they kissed each other and they wept together. And again, let no one dare ruin this moment by suggesting this is in any way sexual. David wept the most. Jonathan said to David, go in peace. We have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever. Then David left, and Jonathan went back to town. And they never see each other again. This is it. David becomes a fugitive whom Saul tirelessly hunts down for the next 10 years. But in years to come, when David is finally brought to the throne by God, he will remember this oath of friendship that he made with King Saul. And even though it was made with Jonathan. And even though Jonathan has been slain in battle, David will remember this by caring for the disabled son of Jonathan, who survives. Pastor Ron will teach a message on that relationship sometime in July. Friendship arises out of shared spaces. It arises out of shared experiences. And lastly, and most deeply, it arises out of the sharing of souls. You can share space and you can share experiences with someone, but still have the shallowest of relationships with them until you dare to open up your heart and share with the other your deepest longings and your deepest needs and your deepest hurts. David and Jonathan had that sort of relationship. Remember the words of chapter 18, verse 1? David and Jonathan were what? One in spirit. If you've read any of the Anne of Green Gables books, you'll understand this concept very well. The idea of discovering a friend so close, what Anne called a bosom friend. Someone that becomes for you a kindred spirit. Anne shared that Matthew and Diana and Gilbert Blythe. When Diana asked what a bosom friend was, Anne replied, the quote's on your note sheet, a bosom friend is an intimate friend, a really kindred spirit to whom I can confide my inmost soul. Now the bond that drew Jonathan and David together, more than anything else they shared, their militaristic adventures and their courage, all of that aside, the thing that drew these two men together and cemented their friendship was their tremendous love for God. Now we caught a glimpse last week with David when we first met him. When we mused together, we said, what must David have been doing when he was alone in those fields tending his father's sheep? And we said, he had to have been seeking God. Other young men and women by themselves would do other things, terrible things, dark things, not David. He was seeking God, growing in his relationship with God. And you know what? Jonathan had this same passion. The writer of Samuel gives us one tiny little story. It's in chapter 14 of 1 Samuel. It gives us a glimpse into Jonathan's heart. And as you read the story, if you know David's life, you'll go, wow. It's like he and David are the same person. And so as you look into that story, we see three soul traits that link these men. First of all, Jonathan and David shared a similar fire or zeal for God's honor. The Israelites were being pulverized by the Philistines in chapter 14. So much so that the Hebrews are having to flee to the hills and hide in the caves. Well, Jonathan gets fed up with this. And one day Jonathan says to his armor bearer, it's in verse 6, come, let's go over to the outpost of these uncircumcised fellows. Who does that sound like? Do you remember King David? Before he was king, little boy, David and Goliath, is fed up by this standoff between David and Goliath, between the Philistines and the Hebrews. He sees Goliath strutting on the battlefield. And what does David say? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Both men had a zeal for God's honor. From the story, we also see that Jonathan and David shared a similar confidence in God's power. In chapter 14 and verse 6, Jonathan says to his armor bearer, perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. David, as he charges out to face Goliath, he cries out, all those who are gathered here will know that it is not by the sword or spear that the Lord saves. For the battle belongs to the Lord, and he will give you into my hands. Same spirit that Jonathan had. And from the story in chapter 14, we see that they also shared a similar instinct to seek God's will. In verse 8 of chapter 14, Jonathan seeks God's direction by setting a fleece. He says to his armor bearer, hey, if the Philistines say to us, wait here and we'll come to you, well, we'll know this isn't our day. But if they say, come up to us, that'll be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands. The Philistines, of course, say, hey, come up here. And Jonathan says, yee-haw, saddle up, charges in with his sword, and sends to flight 20 of them. Verse 13, the Philistines fell before Jonathan. In that first attack, Jonathan and his armor bearer killed some 20 men. Then panic struck the whole Philistine army. It was a panic sent from God. What happened at the end after Goliath was dead? The Israel army rallied. A panic fell on the Philistines. The Hebrews won the day. David was just the same way as Jonathan when it came to seeking God. He was eager to know God's direction. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, write that in the margin. It's a story of David battling the Philistines. And in 2 Samuel 5:19, the writer says that David inquired of God, ask God, should I go and fight them? Will you give them into our hands? And God says to him, go get them, boy. I'm with you. Charges out and wins the battle. A few verses later, Philistines are back. It's another day, another battle. But David doesn't rely on what God told him before. 4 verses later, in 2 Samuel 5, it again says that David inquired of God. And God says to him, go, but don't go straight up. I want you to go around them. And David obeys God because that's his instinct. And again, he and God win the day. These two men had a spiritual affinity, a spiritual power. was a carbon copy of each other. And so can you see how it must have been the first time David and Jonathan got together? Had a cup of coffee or cider or whatever it is they drank. And they started tentatively sharing their stories. They tentatively started opening their heart. All of a sudden, their chest must have started thumping. Because here was twin sons of different mothers. One heart that was beating in the two of them. And when the linkage between you and another person is Jesus Christ, is the living God, there is no bond that is stronger than that. Stronger than steel, that is. And it outlasts time. Janice and I have moved around a lot in our lives. And we met a lot of remarkable people whom we have shared our souls with. And one thing we've observed in our travels is that when we are together again with these friends, after what could be years of inattentiveness, nothing but Christmas cards, all it takes is the first course of supper before we're right back where we started from, laughing and enjoying each other's company. Have you ever had that kind of friend? And so I could give a shout out right here, right now, to Mario and Sydney. And I could give a shout out to Robert and Sandra, Paul and Helen, Simon and Esther, Tim and Deb. That's what a bosom friend is all about. But to have a soul friend, you have to lay bare your soul. Right? Is that easy to do? Open up your heart for somebody else to see? I heard it said that men's friendships are... Come here, Troy. No, nothing embarrassing. This will be quick. I'm not going to touch you. This is men's friendships right here. Ah! It's shoulder to shoulder. Thank you. I didn't tell him he was going to do this. That's why. You know what women's friendships are? Like that. But you know what? I've met guys who could bench press 200 and 300 pounds. But I'll tell you what, to suggest to them that they turn 90 degrees to face another man and start unbearing their heart, their knees get all wobbly. Thanks, man. Go away. Go away. No. So as we wrap up here, just a couple quick thoughts. He's good. He's good. How do you develop friendships? How do you grow in friendships? A couple quick thoughts. Just jot these down, then we're going to show a Father's Day video and wrap up with a couple songs. First, you got to start small. I saw this in a greeting card. Friendship is not a big thing, but it's a million little things. And I think that's true. And so fire out a text, remember a birthday, grab a cup of coffee. It's not that complicated. Secondly, get Jesus into the conversation early. If you wait for months to even bring up your spiritual side with the other person you're trying to be friends with, then it's going to be awkward when the time comes to do that. But if you do it early in the relationship, and you keep it real and you keep it natural, it'll be the easiest of things. And so you're together and say, hey, what do you think of that last sermon? Or what you've been reading in your Bible? Or, hey, you know, I've never heard how you came to faith. Or how about you and Jesus? Why do you like Jesus so much? Just get talking. Get asking those questions. And simple question like, hey, how can I be praying for you? And speaking of prayer, there is nothing more awesome than when you're together with somebody than to say at the end, hey, can we say a quick prayer together? And again, that might seem awkward, but the quicker and oftener that you do it, thank you. I'm an English major, but I've forgotten. The easier it gets. But sometimes it's just hard to say the words. So let's practice right here, right now. This is practice. This is training school. Repeat after me. Hey, can we say a quick prayer? Oh, that was robotic. That's going to sound on the video. Hey, can we say a quick prayer? Turn to a neighbor. Hey, can we say a quick prayer? What would be awesomer?
That's right.
Is if a husband, you who are married, if you husbands would say that to your wives tonight. Hey, say it with me. Can we say a quick prayer? It would be awesome if parents would start doing that with their children. Hey, can we say a quick prayer? Even on Skype. Praying on Skype's beautiful. You're having somebody over for a barbecue this summer. You have a good time together, lots of laughs, you're getting to know each other. Before you head on home, say, hey, can we say a quick prayer? Get Jesus into the conversation early and often. Keep it natural, because it ought to be. It's the most cool thing in your life, Jesus. It's great. Thirdly, be honest, be humble. Be honest, be humble. Set aside the masks. Stop with the bloomin' posing. We humans are so pitiful sometimes. Now, honesty may not get you a lot of friends, but it'll get you the right ones. I didn't make that up. I saw it on the internet, but it was good. See, I'm being honest with you. I can't let you think how wise I am. I'm not. There's an original word in this teaching today. I stole it from Spurgeon. No, this is my teaching. Don't be afraid to be honest about your needs, your hurts. And don't be afraid to bring honesty into the conversation if you see that the other person needs it. Proverbs 27:6 says, wounds from a friend can be trusted. That's risky. To be able to say to another person either, I really did a dumb thing. Or to say to them, pal, that was really a dumb thing. That takes risk. It requires risk, but it's worth it. Socrates, the philosopher, said, sometimes you put up walls not to keep people out, but to see who cares enough to break them down. People play these games in church all the time. A lot of wounded people come to Grace. Grace has become a place for people that are really wounded and hurt. But we don't catch everybody. Some people come in like frightened alley cats, and as soon as the relationship starts getting personal, starts getting intimate, where correction is offered and accountability is put forward, off they go. I had this happen recently. It's painful every time. But a friendship where there's real honesty and real humility can be one of the most incredible things. Fourth, if friendships are hard to come by, never forget that you have the friendship of God first and foremost. I told you the story last week of how while in grade school and in middle school, I could never find my footing because my family was moving all the time. And so I became a bit of a loner and a target for bullying. And the one thing that saved me during that time was that I knew that God loved me and Jesus was my friend and that I mattered to Him. It's not a legal fiction, my friends. It is real. Psalm 25:14, write that on your note sheet. Oh, you're putting your note sheets away because you have the last blank filled in. Therefore, the sermon must be over. You can always hear it on the recording. Last blank gets filled in. No, you have a scripture to write down. I am correcting you. How does it feel? Great. Psalm 25:14, the friendship of the Lord is for those who fear Him. And Jesus in John 15 said to His disciples, I don't call you servants anymore. I call you friends. Because I have shown to you what the Father has taught me. It's an amazing thought that Jesus wants to be our friend. And in some ways, this might seem odd, but would you get this if I said this? That it's somehow even more comforting for me to know that God wants to be my friend beyond that He loves me. There's something deeper. And Jesus Himself said, greater love there's no one than this. And then He lays down His life for His friends. And then Jesus did that for you and me. He gave His life for us on that cross. He sacrificed it. He died there so that we could have forgiveness and we could become His friends. And that friendship, that relationship is yours for the asking. Yours for the repenting. You're just a prayer away from it. On this Father's Day, dear one, let's hear God's invitation to us to go deeper in our friendships with one another. On this Father's Day, could we reach out to others in a unique way, and may it be that those who cross paths with Grace Baptist Church never, ever have to walk alone. And on this Father's Day, let's grab hold of Jesus' hand and resolve to go deeper in our friendship with Him.